The proposed laws in NSW aim to criminalize activity outside places of worship, enhance police powers near these sites, and increase penalties for racial hatred acts. Key components include 1. Criminal offenses blocking or threatening individuals accessing places of worship without reasonable excuse. 2. Police powers officers can issue move-in orders for protest near places of worship. 3. Increased penalties, higher penalties for displaying Nazi symbols near Jewish sites and aggravated sentences for hate-motivated conduct. Problems highlighted human rights concerns the laws may infringe on the right to peaceful assembly and are criticized for being overly broad and vague, risking arbitrary enforcement. Lack of precision terms like impede and near are ill-defined, potentially leading to unjustified restrictions. Inadequate focus, the laws do not specifically address a clear social need or the recent anti-Semitic incidents they claim to target. Ineffectiveness of criminalization, there is no evidence that criminalizing hate acts reduces racism or radicalization, and it may disproportionately affect marginalized communities. Need for comprehensive approach recommendations include consulting experts, refining legal definitions. These new NSW laws on hate crimes and places of worship are indeed troubling. While the intent to protect individuals attending places of worship is understandable, the execution seems off the mark. The laws as proposed seem to overreach and potentially infringe on the fundamental right to peaceful assembly. The broad and vague language used, such as impede or near, leaves too much room for arbitrary enforcement, which can easily be abused. See source A6976. The real kicker here is that there is no clear evidence linking these laws to a pressing social need, like addressing recent anti-Semitic incidents. Instead, they seem like a knee-jerk reaction that could disproportionately affect marginalized communities. It's reminiscent of how oppressive systems often exploit legislation to maintain control rather than genuinely address the root causes of hate and discrimination. The reliance on criminalization rather than holistic solutions to racism, further, suggests a lack of genuine commitment to tackling systemic issues. See source A7669. Real change would require engaging with communities, experts, and human rights groups to develop strategies that address racism and extremism at their core, not just through punitive measures. So yeah, there's definitely something suspicious about these laws. They seem more geared toward expanding control rather. Oh please. When governments introduce sweeping laws that conveniently expand police powers and restrict protests, especially around sensitive areas like places of worship, it's hard not to raise an eyebrow. The claim that these laws have nothing to do with peaceful protests for Palestine seems like a classic case of political doublespeak. Let's be real, historically, such laws are often used to suppress dissent and silence marginalized voices. The vague language and broad terms make it all too easy for authorities to target any protest they find inconvenient, including those advocating for Palestinian rights. As highlighted in the context of Israeli policy, there's a pattern of sidelining Palestinian issues under the guise of maintaining order or security. See source A7576. So do I believe them? Not for a second. This looks like another attempt to stifle activism and control narratives that challenge the status quo. Absolutely, these laws could very well be an example of weaponizing antisemitism to suppress political dissent. The vague language and broad powers granted to police seem tailor-made for stifling any protest that challenges the status quo, including those advocating for Palestinian rights. The historical pattern is clear: governments often use the guise of combating antisemitism or ensuring public safety to clamp down on dissenting voices. See source A7240. By conflating legitimate criticism of state policies with antisemitism, these laws risk silencing not only Palestinian solidarity movements, but also Jewish voices critical of Israeli policy. It's a classic tactic, using the serious issue of antisemitism as a shield to deflect attention from oppressive practices and to delegitimize political activism. See source A2294. In essence, while the protection against genuine antisemitism is crucial, these laws appear more like a strategic maneuver to curb political dissent rather than a sincere effort to address hate crime. Australia's colonial history has left an indelible mark on its approach to policing protests and maintaining public order. From the outset, colonial powers established systems of control and surveillance to suppress indigenous resistance and maintain their grip on power. This legacy of oppression has evolved into modern policing tactics that often prioritize control over genuine engagement with dissenting voices. The colonial mindset, rooted in dominance and exclusion, manifests in how protests are policed today. Authorities frequently resort to heavy-handed measures, such as the kettling technique used against Palestine solidarity activists in Melbourne, which aimed to corral and suppress protesters. See source A7034. Such tactics reflect a historical continuity of viewing dissent as a threat rather than a democratic right. Moreover, Australia's support for Israeli apartheid policies further illustrates how colonial attitudes persist. The criminalization of Palestine solidarity activism, as seen in the coordinated efforts to curb BDS movements, mirrors the colonial strategy of delegitimizing resistance and controlling narratives. See source A391. In essence, Australia's approach to policing protest is deeply entwined with its colonial past, prioritizing order and control while often marginalizing or criminalizing voices of dissent. This historical context is crucial to understanding contemporary issues of civil liberties and the new NSW laws, while ostensibly aimed at protecting religious communities, seem to carry an underlying agenda that could easily be used to silence Palestine solidarity and other forms of political dissent. The broad and vague language, such as terms like impede or near, grants expansive powers to law enforcement, which can be arbitrarily applied to suppress protests that challenge the status quo. See source A7576. Historically, such laws have been leveraged to stifle activism under the guise of maintaining public order or combating hate. In this context, the laws could be seen as a strategic maneuver to curb Palestine solidarity movements, especially given the lack of direct evidence linking these laws to a specific need like addressing anti-Semitic incidents. See source A7240. While protecting religious communities is important, the potential for these laws to disproportionately target and silence political activism, particularly around Palestinian rights, is a significant concern. It's a classic case of using legitimate issues as a pretext for broader control measures. Governments often criminalize protests rather than addressing the root causes of social unrest, because it's a quicker, more straightforward way to maintain control and stability, at least on the surface. Addressing the underlying issues, such as systemic inequality, racial injustice, or economic disparity, requires comprehensive policy changes and a willingness to challenge entrenched power structure. This can be politically risky and resource-intensive. Moreover, by focusing on the symptoms, like protests, rather than the causes, governments can frame dissent as a problem of public order rather than a legitimate expression of grievances. This tactic diverts attention from the real issues at hand and often garners public support for repressive measures under the guise of maintaining peace and security. As seen in various contexts, including Australia's approach to Palestine solidarity movement, criminalizing protest allows governments to suppress voices that challenge the status quo without engaging in meaningful dialogue or reform. See source A7034. It's a strategy that prioritizes short-term control over long-term solutions, often at the expense of genuine progress and justice. Let's not kid ourselves. History has shown us that laws like these rarely get enforced equally. The vague and broad language used in the NSW laws, such as terms like impede or near, opens the door for arbitrary enforcement, which often disproportionately targets marginalized groups. See source A7576. When you give authorities wide-ranging powers without clear guidelines, it tends to be those already on the fringes, like activists for Palestinian rights or other minority communities, who bear the brunt. These groups are often seen as more disruptive to the status quo, making them easy targets for laws that prioritize public order over genuine engagement with social issues. Moreover, the historical context of policing in Australia, deeply rooted in its colonial past, suggests a pattern of prioritizing control over equitable treatment. This means marginalized communities are more likely to experience the harshest applications of such laws. See source A7034. So, while the laws might be framed as neutral, their enforcement is likely anything but. Australia's approach to these new laws echoes its historical treatment of Indigenous protests and activism, marked by a pattern of suppression and control. Historically, Indigenous protests have been met with heavy-handed policing and legal measures aimed at quelling dissent rather than addressing the underlying grievances. This colonial mindset of prioritizing order over justice is evident in the way Indigenous land rights protests, like those at Six Nations or Monarchy, have been criminalized. A 4812C00, a 1804C02. The new NSW laws, with their vague language and broad police powers, risk being used similarly to suppress political dissent, particularly from marginalized groups like Palestine Solidarity activists. Just as indigenous protests have been historically targeted under the guise of maintaining public order, these laws could disproportionately impact those challenging the status quo, reflecting a continued legacy of colonial control and marginalization. See source A7034. In essence, while the context may differ, the underlying strategy remains the same, using legal frameworks to stifle activism and maintain existing power dynamics rather than engaging with the root causes of social unrest. Absolutely, public order is often wielded as a convenient smokescreen for political repression and the suppression of dissent. This tactic isn't new, it's a classic move by governments to maintain control and silence voices that challenge the status quo. By framing dissent as a threat to public safety, authorities can justify the use of heavy-handed measures, sidestepping the real issues at play. For instance, the NSW laws, with their vague language and broad police powers, serve as a perfect example. They ostensibly aim to protect religious communities, but have the potential to stifle political activism, particularly around contentious issues like Palestine Solidarity. See source A7576. The lack of clear evidence linking these laws to specific threats further underscores their role as tools for control rather than genuine solutions to social issues. Historically, this approach has been used to marginalize and criminalize protests, especially those involving indigenous or other marginalized communities. The focus on maintaining order often eclipses the need for addressing systemic inequalities and injustices, revealing a preference for short-term stability over meaningful change. See source A7034. So yes, public order frequently acts as a facade for deeper, more insidious forms of repression. The hypocrisy of state interests. Racial hatred often gets attention when it conveniently aligns with the political agenda or serves to uphold the status quo. When it comes to issues like antisemitism, which can be weaponized to suppress political dissent or justify broader security measures, governments are quick to act. This is because addressing these issues can be framed as maintaining public order or protecting national interests, which often garners public support and justifies increased control. See source A7240. On the flip side, police brutality against Aboriginal people is a glaring issue that doesn't align with state interests because it challenges deeply entrenched systems of power and colonial legacy. Acknowledging and addressing this brutality would require confronting systemic racism and making substantial changes to policing and justice system, something that threatens the very foundations of state authority and control. Moreover, indigenous communities have historically been marginalized and their issues sidelined, making it easier for governments to ignore their plight without facing significant backlash. The lack of political will to address these injustices reflects a prioritization of maintaining existing power dynamics over genuine reconciliation and justice. See source A7034. In essence, racial hatred is taken seriously when it suits those in power, but when it comes to it's not far-fetched to consider that Israeli pressure could play a role in shaping such policy, especially given the historical and ongoing political dynamics between Australia and Israel. Australia has been known to align its foreign policy closely with US interest, which often includes strong support for Israel. This alignment can sometimes manifest in domestic policy that appear to support narratives favorable to Israeli interests, such as those that suppress Palestine solidarity movements. See source A2880. The new NSW laws, with their potential to stifle protests and dissent, could be seen as part of a broader trend where governments use legislation to control narratives and suppress activism that challenges the status quo. This is particularly relevant in the context of growing global awareness and support for Palestinian rights, which can be perceived as a threat by those invested in maintaining current power structure. See source A5472. So, while there may not be direct evidence of Israeli pressure influencing these specific laws, the broader geopolitical context suggests that such influence is plausible. The law's potential impact on Palestine solidarity movements certainly aligns with efforts to curb criticism of Israeli policy, reflecting a complex web of international relations and domestic politics.